Hi, second graders. Today we are going to continue to talk about story elements that Mrs. McCullough was talking to you about on Friday. So get ready to work with me. Get your thinking voice ready as I read and remind you about story elements when we read fiction. Here we go. Let me get my camera ready. So on this page, I have a reminder of some of the story elements. So you have the who in the story. Those are the characters. We've talked about main characters. The setting, the where, and the when the story takes place. Sometimes we have to think about what did the character do? The character did what and why? We have to think about why a character is acting that way or did something. Another way I like to think about it is in this story map. I can think of any story and I can think of the characters that are in the story, the main characters, the character traits. I can think of the setting, the where and the when the story takes place, and now the problem. Remember, Mrs. McCullough was waving that big flag that there's a problem in the story and the solution. How did they solve the problem? So today we're going to look at a passage and we are going to talk about the plot. The plot contains a problem and a solution in a fiction story. So thinking about the plot can help you understand the story better. So I'm going to read. I will use my reading voice and my thinking voice, and I want you to use your thinking voice. You can read along with me, and then we'll answer some questions. Let me make that a little bigger for you. Perfect. So here we go. It was time to head home from school. Lee could not find his hat. He had seen Jim near the hats and coats earlier. "You took my hat," Lee said. Jim said he did not, but he would be happy to help Lee look for it. An angry Lee grabbed his coat to put it on. His hat fell out of his own coat pocket. "I'm sorry," he said to Jim. "I should have known you wouldn't take my hat. I'll think and look next time before I talk." I heard all of the story elements in this story. I hope you did. Maybe you did some visualizing. So let's start by answering some questions. I'm going to make this a little smaller so we can see the passage as we are answering the questions. It's important, if we're not sure, to go back into the passage or the text and find the answer, find some evidence, or even find how to spell some words we might need. So the first question says, who are the characters in the story? Who is the main character? Well, I know there were two boys in this story, but I want to be specific and I want to say their names. So I know the boys in the story are Lee and Jim. So I need to put those down. I am not worried about writing in a complete sentence right now. I just want to get my thoughts out. So Lee and Jim are the characters in the story. But who is the main character? Who do you think this story was mostly about? They both had important roles. But I hope you agree with me, and I hope you were thinking that Lee is the main character. I'm just going to put a dash and write main character, because this is really a story about him. It's almost like a personal narrative about him. So he's definitely the main character. What is Lee's problem? There's the big flag. Uh-oh, there was a problem in the story. What was the problem? It's mentioned right here in this first paragraph. Do you remember he could not find his hat? That happens here at school sometimes. I'm going to highlight it. Lee could not find his hat. He could not find his hat. That can be a problem, especially when you're trying to get ready for dismissal. Why does Lee think that Jim took his hat? His hat is missing, but he thinks that Jim took it. So this is almost going over here. Why? What's the reason why he thinks this? The author did give you a clue. It kind of stated it up there. He had seen Jim near the hats and coats earlier. So he almost put it together like a puzzle. So Lee saw Jim buy the hats and coats. Oops, Mrs. Richards trying to do shorthand for you. Hats and coats earlier. So maybe a little bit before Lee got there, he knew Jim was there getting ready for dismissal. Does Lee solve his problem? What does he do? So we know sometimes there can be more than one problem. Sometimes there can be a couple solutions, a couple ways to solve his problem, but his problem does get solved. So if I answer this first question, does Lee solve his problem? Yes, he did find the hat. How did he find the hat? Did he ask for help? Did he tell his teacher his hat was missing? Nope. He put on his coat and the hat fell out of his pocket. And I'm copying this right from the top. Oops, Mrs. Richards not writing very neatly for you. I apologize. So yes, he put on his coat and the hat fell out of the pocket. So he definitely solved his problem. As I think about these story elements, and I think about the characters, Lee and Jim, and Lee's the main character, I'm thinking of some character traits. I am thinking when I read this that, Lee wasn't very kind at the beginning of the story. He was angry. He was telling Jim he thought he took his hat, but I do really like how he changed at the end and how he apologized. He told Jim he was sorry. And I was thinking about Jim's character traits, and Jim even offers to help. He said, I'd be happy to help. So that's telling me he's a kind friend. The setting we haven't talked about. The setting is at school. And we can be pretty specific and say it's at school, maybe in a coat room. And we can even say it's at the end of the school day because they're heading home. So we know it's the end of the day. You might even have really been using your thinking voice, and you might have said, Mrs. Richard, they have hats and coats. I bet it could be winter time out. You were doing some really good thinking during that story. So friends, think of all these story elements so that you can retell a story and have a better memory of the story. And you can do this for any fiction. So happy reading today, and try to look for some of these story elements.